Let's start tonight with a little silence, since we ended this morning in laughter. 5 minutes or so, I'll ring the bell. Okay. We're going to do some loving kindness practice tonight, but first, because I think it's such a powerful practice in terms of relationships with other people and the world. But first I thought I'd address some of the questions you asked this morning, since they're all interconnected with it. Tomorrow morning, we'll talk more directly about the specifics of integration, and maybe Surya and I will do it together. We're trying to work it out. So someone asked, how do I keep inspired to do this, to have the practice be central to my life in the world? You know, it's a hardest question, and hard in the sense that you have to keep re-inspiring yourself. I found it doesn't stop. It's not like you begin to learn practice and then you inspire yourself and then that's it. I find I need different things to inspire myself all the time, you know, to keep it going. And recently, well, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but the basics are, this does sound contradictory, but the first thing is practice. The more you practice, the more you will be inspired to practice, because what happens, of course, is that you recognize how beneficial it is in your life. And even though it's hard, you remember, because things unfold in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise. So the most important thing is to practice. That will keep you going. But of course it wanes at time, and you need other things. Community or Sangha is extremely important, and as you know, the Buddha said it was the most important thing. We're inspired by each other, and sometimes we're just kind of shepherded along by each other. You know, we feel like, oh, I said I would do it with that person, or he thinks I'm going to meditate with him, or what, you know. But often then in conversation with each other, we're inspired because we work things through together. And sometimes we're just inspired by the presence of others. But in all those ways, it's true in every tradition, you know, in that the fellowship or community of people who are searching after the truth is extremely important. It's almost impossible to do it without that. So if you don't have a natural group of people to sit with or to talk to about these things, I would search them out. You know, there are ways to find who's doing practice in your area. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same practice. They don't have to be students of Surya's. But if you find other Dharma students, it'll be really helpful for you. Then, of course, there's the level at which it doesn't have to be called the Dharma. There's a level at which you can, my partner is a blues musician and chef, and he doesn't do Buddhist practice and never has. And one time, and we've been together for 25 years now. For the first 15 years, I said, this can't possibly work. You don't meditate, you know, it was like, at about year 18, I began to think, well, maybe something's happening. Anyhow, we're still together, and it's better than ever. But early in the relationship, our friend Ramdas, some of you know who he is, a spiritual teacher, was living with us. And someone called our house, and the person was also a musician, and he knew EJ that way, but he also knew who Ramdas was. And so he called our house, and Ramdas answered, and he asked for EJ. And then this person said to Ramdas, why are you living with E.J. Lynch? That's so strange. And Ram Dass said, E.J. will become enlightened by making the perfect hamburger. So it doesn't always have to be another Dharma partner in the sense of the same practice, but you need other people to help you wake up. It's just the truth of it. Reading, of course, and you're fortunate to have a teacher who's written all those great books. Reading widely about this can be really helpful. It's the same stuff over and over again, but every voice expresses it somewhat differently, and all of a sudden, the Four Noble Truths, this is fascinating, It seems all brand new. So that, and recently I have been very inspired by the research that's been going on, the research on meditation. So, as you probably know, there's social science research and neuroscience research going on. The most important single element in this whole field of research is this new idea of neuroplasticity. This is my favorite new word. Which means that you can change your brain. You can not just change your mind in the sense of having a different opinion. You actually can change your brain. And you can change it by doing meditation. And meditation changes it. And this keeps going until you die, by the way, which is also really a radical new idea. And in fact, some new research at Harvard is showing that, interesting, that older people who have been meditating for some time have more kind of a flexible, I'm not sure that's the word they use, brains, than younger people who haven't meditated. They did some kind. And they're finding that meditation does amazing things. And someone asked about stress, and I mean, you probably know most of this, but if you really get into it and think about it, it's so stunning that your cortisol levels drop. So your short-term, your long-term stress with all the negative aspects of that decreases. It increases attention, all the different forms of attention. It increases empathy, which allows you to, in this work we're doing, I mentioned before, with these Army caregivers, they're looking at how to restore resilience. And so they look at how meditation can help you be more resilient by recovering more quickly from negative information. It's important for scientists and labs too, because every theory is disproved, and they have to recover quickly from negative information, and certainly medics in the field have to recover. Also, it helps you separate, as I was saying, another suffering from your own, so that you can be compassionate for another person's suffering and care and take care of them, but know that it's not yours. Let it go. One of the things I love is that they found, working with some biotech scientists in Wisconsin, that meditation helps you hold two conflicting ideas in the mind at the same time. I mean, that just seems critical to live through the 21st century, or any century. Who knew? But we know, because you know these things, but then when they're scientifically proved, there's something inspiring about it. Then it enhances your immune system. You've probably heard that. It helps your memory. That's really great. And it thickens the prefrontal cortex, which has to do with attention and memory and so on. And they were doing that research at Harvard, and there was one of these papers came, and but it was in a newspaper or something, and it had a big headline, and it said, Harvard scientists find that meditation increases the size of your brain. And I thought, those people have automatic tenure at Harvard. This is like, that's what they've been looking for all these years. So anyhow, I found that at times when I hear these things, I was sitting at a conference with the Dalai Lama and some of these scientists in DC, and one of these guys was a stress expert, and he started talking about the way meditation reduces cortisol levels, and then he started talking about all the negative aspects of stress. And it was like, I thought, well, that's amazing. I felt like jumping out of my seat after 40 years of meditating, jumping out of my seat and running and finding a room where there was nobody and just sitting down and starting to meditate. It just sounded like the best thing in the world. So find the ways that wake you up and excite you about it. You know, at different times, it's different things. Research can also seem really boring, but. And then the other thing is, and I think I might talk about this tomorrow, is this matter of inquiry into what it is that you're doing. You know, the nature of law or education or social sciences or whatever it is that you're involved in. And I want to give you some more examples of that tomorrow. And the other thing that will keep you inspired is to bring it into your work. And, you know, there are different, someone else in here asked about work. How can I find the good work? There are a few responses to work if you're not satisfied with it now. One is to change your job, you know, and to look for a job that seems like, or work, whether it's that seems like it's more in line with your personal values or with the Dharma perspective. It's not so easy to change your job these days. But that's a possibility. You know, you may just be in the absolute wrong place, and then you look for something that is more aligned with what matters to you. But it's also possible, of course, to change. It's like that's a Buddha story, I think, about the shoe leather, you know, the person who wanted to cover the earth with leather so that it wouldn't hurt his feet. And someone suggested that maybe he could wear shoes. So it's like, maybe you'd change, but you can, if you change, and you change your relationship to your work, then that's a whole other way of being with it. And of course, that's not so easy, but that's what this is all about, transforming ourselves and our relationship to the world. So, and there are a lot of, I'll post some, I have a list of books on, you know, bringing practice into work and transforming yourself in relation to work and so on. I'll put them on the board there, but there are ways to work with that. The other thing is that people are actually bringing practice, and it depends entirely on who you're working with and what your work is, but quite a few people now have brought practice into the workplace and different ways, everything from starting a meeting with a few moments of silence to let's remember who we are and why we're here, or starting with, you know, a poem or a quote, just changes the energy and the intention of the space to many different kinds of practices. We are at Google, where we're teaching a course in mindfulness-based emotional intelligence, because they're all techies, you know, they're all nerds, they're all really young, and they're all really smart, and they're really competitive, they all went to the best schools, and they've been in front of their screens for their whole lives. So they are really good at everything, except they're not good at either self-awareness or awareness of others. So we cooked up this course, and it's pretty wonderful. And Google, being the big search engine, called the course Search Inside Yourself. So, and of course they love that the more you look, the more you find, just that's their thing. And so, so we try to look at things you can do in the workplace, and we came up with mindful emailing, where it's really simple, but it was so radical for them. They, you type out your email and then just take 3 mindful breaths and then read the email from the perspective, put yourself in the place of the person who's receiving it, and in this case, particularly with its emotional dimension. And imagine if it's going to have it's going to send the message that you want it to. It's going to have the impact that you think. Or if it's going to alienate somebody, make them angry, or maybe not make them supportive, whatever. So those 3 breaths, read it from the other perspective, and then change it or send it. And it's kind of obvious that that would be a good way. But it was so radical, so everybody had homework, and then they came back the next week to report. And somebody said, I did it, I wrote it, I took the breaths, I thought about it, and then I did something amazing. I said, what? He said, I picked up the phone. So there are sometimes small changes make a big difference. So there are things that, there are ways in which to transform the workplace itself. And at Contemplative Mind, of course, we did a lot of things. We had 1 day a month, we had a staff retreat all day. And even for me, this was radical, I thought. And it was absolutely the best thing ever. And I would never run an organization again without doing that. Because we came to know each other in the way you all are coming to know each other here. We're seeing like the best intentions of everybody to practice, to grow, show people's vulnerabilities. And so that when stuff would happen, and it always does, in the workplace, that we could also remember that this person, just like us, was, trying to do their best, suffering just like us, so on. That like the basic compassion teachings just come to life in that. So there are many things you can do, and we also, on the Contemplative Mind website, we have lots of information that if you're interested in that. Someone asked about balancing, specifically service and practice, but I think the balancing is central. That's one of the big challenges, obviously, of all the different parts of our life. With service and practice, usually the issue is that whatever the action is, whether it's service or other kinds of work, we get called into it. And usually the practice gets neglected because the action has a pull. It grabs the mind more easily, and then we keep going. There's no easy answer to it except awareness. Just paying attention to when you feel like in your service you're not really serving as well as you could because you're not very present anymore. And then you need to do more practice. You need to keep adjusting all the time around practice and work and family and so on. And you know how to adjust by paying attention, just being more awake. And you get more awake by doing more practice. So it all fits together. Someone asked about commercialism and materialism and the Dharma. And I guess by this time, I think that it's just an inevitable part of an idea or a movement or entering this culture, which is so commercialized and materialistic. And in the beginning, I used to be, horrified by this and that, But now I think it's like one time when I was running the business and people started copying us, and some advisor said to me, don't look over your shoulder, just look straight ahead. And I think that our work is to keep our own practice and our lives, with as much integrity as possible, and not worry so much about it. I was thinking about that. Did I write down here? Yeah, we, in the beginning, this was interesting. One of the first things we did in '96, I think, was offer a series of meditation retreats and teachings in the demon corporation of the day, which was Monsanto. And for the 10 years before that, I had been working in Guatemala with the recovery of the land there, which had been destroyed by chemicals made by companies like Monsanto. So it was really the demon for me. But we did it. And I learned a huge amount from it. One of the really amazing things was the very first retreat we did was with the 18 top executives. And we did a 3-day meditation retreat and in silence. And the person who was teaching it said, we knew we couldn't lecture them about what they were doing, but we wanted to give them some opportunities to awaken to what they were doing. So he taught a loving kindness practice that we'll do later, but he did it specifically for all species. And he went through not all the species, but reaching out and mentioning many of them. And by this time, people had been sitting for 3 days. Most of them had, I think all of them, had never done anything like this before. They really put a lot of effort into it. And they were all very successful at what they did, scientists and managers. And so they had very good focus, and they dropped in pretty deep very quickly. And during this meditation, I opened my eyes, and I looked around the room, and just about every person sitting there had tears running down their face. And I got in that moment that it was, they thought that they were doing the right thing, but there was a place in them that also knew that they weren't. It was complicated, but it was it was extraordinary for me to see that, because I had realized that I had thought, oh yeah, we're all the same except, and here was this pod of people in St. Louis who were really not. But when we were working there, this is one of the first things we did at Contemplative Mind. And so the thing about the teachings, the Dharma, is that it's priceless. So in the Vipassana, this person was a Vipassana teacher in that tradition. Teachers can't ask for money for giving the teachings. Can't charge at all. So, and what students then, after, just some of you have probably taken those courses, then at the end, people make a donation of whatever they want to the teacher, because the teachings are priceless. So we were getting ready to do this retreat, and so Monsanto was going to cover the costs of the thing and pay for it. So they said, well, how much, you know? And I said, well, I said, the teachings are priceless, that we can't charge for them, and we just would like you to give whatever you think is right. So, but you know, the person I was talking to was like the comptroller or something. It wasn't the person who was coming to the retreat. So he said, we can't do that. So we had to work out this thing where, you know, I figured out how much teachers would get at a similar size retreat and how much teachers needed to get in order to live. And then I charged Monsanto, and then the center freely gave the donation to the teacher. So it worked in a kind of technical way. But years later, somebody from there said to me, you know, it was some of those classes are really fabulous. But the thing I learned the most from was when you said that the teachings are priceless and you couldn't charge us for it. That notion I'd never thought about that before. I'd never thought that something could be priceless and something that could be taught couldn't be, the price couldn't be put on it. So that's why the Dharma brings up all these issues around commercialism for us. And it's just a great inquiry. And it's inevitable in this culture that it's all going to get mixed up together. And we just have to keep returning to what we know to be true, whatever that is for each one of us. Around money, somebody else asked about money and not just making it and having it, but giving it. And I'm not great on this subject, but being with money is really a practice. And I spend a lot of time with philanthropists and doing retreats with philanthropists and foundation executives. And I was always on the other side of trying to get the grant, you know. So then I was in these retreats with foundation executives and listening to their suffering, really, about what that's like. And that how, for them, it was really difficult to be in this hierarchical relationship in the foundation world with the grantees and all this stuff. And I think that it's just like anything else. If it's been given to you to deal with money, investing money, giving away money, wanting money, that it's just something to bring mindful awareness to and investigate. It's really not different from anything else, although it seems that way a lot of the time. But I think if one brings a curiosity and a mind that is willing to investigate that, just like anything else, that it can open up some new possibilities around it. Someone else said, how do you integrate when you feel like you have nothing to integrate? I think that's never true, but it's a feeling that we have, that there's a kind of, it can be a kind of dullness, or that, I think if you feel that way, I mean, you might feel like you've been through a lot in these days, but then you feel like, but there's nothing really that, you know, I can think about to actually integrate. Or when you get back into your lives, it was like, where did all that go? You know, I don't have any way to integrate this into this big life of mine that's so different. I think it's just to do it anyhow, to work with, remember the words, and, remember that Surya said something about truth, and just work with that in your life, even if you feel like you haven't really gotten it, or it hasn't gone deep enough, that just do it as a practice, because actually, you can't go through an experience like this without a lot happening. It's just that you may not be aware that that's all happened. And if you work with it, you will still learn from it and things will change. I used to say that if you get bored during meditation, that boredom just means you're not paying careful enough attention. Because if you look at anything closely enough, or sit with any idea closely enough, or with yourself with enough attention, it's completely fascinating. But we get bored. We should do this exercise, or send people outside into nature and have them draw a circle, and then for 20 minutes or something, keep bringing your awareness back to this circle of grass and stones and whatever's there. And just over and over, and every time you think, I've seen that, I looked at that, I've seen it, I know it's grass, then you have to keep bringing it back over and over again. And of course, what happens after you're just sick of it and you're bored and you think you've seen it all, the more you look, the more it reveals itself. So that's true of yourself, obviously, and it's true of any situation. So you have the skills from knowing how to look, from doing practice, that you can bring to any situation, and move back into, big sky view and just be with it, and then come back into focusing on it again. And you'll see, there's always more. There's always, always more, because everything's changing all the time. So that thing you were looking at a few minutes ago is different now. That thing being yourself, usually. Okay, we're just... That's most of this morning's questions. We were like 3 minutes. Does anyone have a burning question now? About integration? Yes. Okay.
I'm a faculty, and as you remember, the best training for being totally egocentric is being faculty.
Yeah.
And suggestions on how you can work in that environment to reduce the meism.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is, of course you're asking the wrong person, because that's, I'm faculty too. No, but is taking some risks. I find if you take some risks and put yourself in new situations, you will often not be as good as you were in comfortable situations. And that enforces a certain kind of humility.
My question is actually a little different, because I do that.
Yeah.
But it's, how do you then get the group to stop being a series of I's, and an I each has a different opinion on everything? And how do you begin to be a Sangha?
If you want to create a Sangha, is that what you're saying? Could help support a community to grow? Is that what you mean?
Getting an organization that's composed of people who are very sure of I.
Yeah.
To stop thinking just I, and 15 of us all thinking I.
Yeah.
And I can I do okay, and they think, not surprisingly, I'm the oddball.
Uh-huh.
But that's okay at this point in my life. But the group still then is all this series of eyes with this one crazy person.
I think it's not that we stop being eyes when we're part of a group, but that we're both, that we're both individuals and part of a group. And I think the best way is to create spaces, environment, where people can actually experience that. So doing practice in a group like where they're doing individual practice does one thing on a subtle level, but there are also group practices that you can do. And actually, I wasn't going to get into any of that, but we did a survey of a lot of organizations that do group contemplative practices together, and they all report that people, that there's a stronger sense of community and group, and that there's less ego in relationships, and that there's more cooperation and less competition, and so on, all the better communication. Once people experience themselves as part of a group as well as being an individual. And just like what we go through here, it's experiencing it from within is the most powerful way. You can talk about it, and that frames it, but it really helps when people do a whole range of different practices together. Not only silent sitting, but other kinds of group things.
How do you get them to say, I don't have to finish this grant right now. This manuscript has to go out. Let's take 15 minutes, not solving my problem or the department's problem, but to sit.
Well, it's a big answer. It's different in every situation, but it doesn't work when it's mandated. And so there are different ways people start, by, as I said, starting small and then beginning to open up that conversation about what we'd like to cultivate in the workplace. Always starting where people are and asking, what they would like to see. And it's always surprising to see that, most people want a more harmonious, more collaborative, aware workplace. And then you start working from that and exploring some things you could do together to help that happen. I can give you some materials on it, but okay. Yeah.
I think I'd asked about integrating retirement with...
Yeah, you did. I think about that it's, because I'm just this year I stopped being director and became a senior fellow. And I think it's, in some ways it's no different from anything else, but it's also an opportunity to ask what you really want to do. You're obviously healthy and, energetic. This is a new thing. That people are so healthy and energetic for a long time after their work stops. I think it's a perfect time for, self-examination and rediscovery of your basic values and looking for work. Now you can do anything, and of course that's difficult. And my experience so far is it has been more difficult for men than for women, but it's a great opportunity to see what it is that you would really like to do and to take risks. Is that kind of what you were thinking? Maybe that's... I wouldn't have said this until this year because it would sound like a platitude, but I've been working with it myself.
Yeah, I think so many of us identify fully with our job. That's what
Yeah.
we are somehow, and there's a certain amount of a fair amount of stress involved in even that openness of, no, I can take chances. Where do I want it?
Yeah,
Where
well,
do I
that's
go?
the,
What do I do?
I mean, that's the deeper level.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not my job, it turns out.
Right.
You know?
There are no
Then
aptitude
what?
tests for retirement like
Yeah,
other
but if
jobs.
I'm not my job, what am I?
Yeah.
You know? And that, you know, that's the essential question. And, and it's really good to ask in the last stage of life, I find, because it's the last chance. Yeah, so this is the time. This is the time for really taking the Dharma teachings really seriously. I mean, those are real questions, you know. If I'm not this I, who am I? If I'm not this job, who am I? This is great, because you're not going to get caught up in thinking that you are the job. That's a big support for this kind of work.
Thank you.
I'm interested in how you got Monsanto to want you to come in and do a 3-day retreat. How did that happen?
It happened the way that almost everything that we've gotten involved in has happened. It's called, I think, officially it's called opportunistic. An opportunity presented itself, wherein and this actually gives me really a lot of hope, because in all these big organizations and small, but you know, it's one person sort of comes to something like this, and then like this guy in the military, or you know, in this case it happened to be this person was just becoming the CEO. He'd just taken the job, and he was very smart and kind of awake to things in the world, and he had, I think, read a book by John Kabat-Zinn, and he started thinking, this one that people were starting to write this kind of like hip business, fast company kind of analysis, you know, like Zen opens up your mind and everybody will be more creative and there will be more possibilities in beginner's mind, and you know, that, which is worse actually than commercialism. That's like this kind of applying the precious truths in a superficial way. But Bob wasn't superficial, and neither's John, but you know, people do that in business. But so he was interested. He actually got it, you know, that it would, and he wanted to leave behind a lot of, he didn't get the whole thing, but, and so he'd been in school, as people who went to Harvard always say, he'd been to school in Cambridge with someone who was part of our board. So they got together and they met each other for lunch one day, and it came about. So then that gave us an opening, and we did, it's a long story and a really amazing story, and it's very interesting in terms of this. There were quite a few people in the Buddhist community who said, you shouldn't be doing it. There's some people you should not teach the Dharma to. So that turned out not to be true. But that's how it happened, and that's really how it's happened in so many situations. And the good part of that is, I mean, that's like not working from the grassroots up, but what was good about it is that there are people all over the place who really get a moment of awakening and just think, you know, things could be better. We could be better to each other. We could be thinking about, as one scientist there said to me after he had an aha moment in a sitting, he said, Mirabai, I just realized, this is funny now, but we make things that, we make products that kill life, they Roundup and herbicide. we could make products that support life. If it's not funny, it's really deep, you know? And so, I mean, it's really interesting how, and it doesn't follow the way awakening moves through the culture doesn't follow a ordinary prescription for the way that ideas move through a culture. It's different. Yeah, but yeah, so it could happen very effectively there, but it happens in other ways in different places. We should. Okay. I wanted to do some loving kindness practice tonight because essentially, as we said before, that the big difference between being here, being out in the world, is so much of your life, it has to do with your relationships with other people. And as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always said, my religion is kindness. That when I first entered this and just had a totally Western conditioning and education, I thought ideas like happiness and kindness sounded really kind of not very interesting. You know, kind of not very deep, you know, just kind, nice, you know. But it turns out that kindness is so powerful, and that this practice can really radically change things. I've seen it change relationships relationships that looked like they were static forever, that they would never change. I'm sure many of you have done this or versions of it before, but it's really extraordinary. And for years, I would never teach it in a secular setting. You know, talking about kindness and love, I didn't think it would work. I thought attention, insight, wisdom, people could respond to that. But the truth is, after some years when I thought back on it, the most powerful changes and insights that I experienced people having always had to do with the opening of the heart. And that might be our culture, because our minds are so developed and our hearts not so much, often. But whatever it is, it's really, it's wonderful. This is a guided meditation, and I know that not everybody likes to be guided in meditation, especially since you've been doing non-meditation. I mean, this is like taking it all the way to the other end, you know. But, and so if you really don't like guided meditations, you're probably strong enough in your big sky Dzogchen now that you can just be there and just let it go. But if you do like it, then you can follow along. This practice is based on the traditional way of doing the practice with certain phrases, and I will say those, but also you can use any phrases that occur to you as you're bringing these, we're going to bring different people to mind. Anything that feels right to you about opening your heart, feeling kindness for another person, that's the way to go. This isn't the kind of practice where it's really important to follow what I tell you exactly the way it is for, say, a shamatha practice or something. The other thing is that it is a practice. So what I'll guide you to do is open your heart in kindness to other beings. But it won't always be easy to do. And then sometimes it'll feel like nothing's happening. Sometimes it'll feel like, you're closed down to that person and you can't open it. But it's a practice. It's to notice what's going on. And it's also true that the actual repetition of this intention in itself, even if you're not feeling anything good, is working. It's working, like doing mantra meditation. Might feel like nothing's happening, but actually it's doing its work just by you repeating it. So as we do this, just notice what's happening in yourself and don't worry about it. Just notice. Don't judge. Don't try to change anything. But at the same time, you're working on opening your heart. But don't try to, if you're feeling that you can't do this, just notice that and keep following the instruction, and we'll see what happens. So for this practice, it's important to be comfortable. So it's not so important not to move or anything. So find a comfortable position so that your awareness is going to be in what you think of as your heart center. It's not where your physical heart is, but when you imagine your heart or you imagine loving energy, it's that place, which is usually somewhere in the center of your chest. So you can close your eyes and bring your awareness to that place you think of as your heart center, and just imagine breathing softly in and out of this center. This practice is about cultivating unconditional love. Love with no judgment. Love that doesn't want anything in return. Just the purest form of love. Kind of love you might feel for a new baby. Just breathing in and out of your heart center, and with the intention of just liberating this sweet, pure, unconditional, unwanting love. Breathing in and out. And loving kindness practice always begins with loving kindness for yourself. The teaching is that inasmuch as you can love yourself, you're able to love others. We don't usually think of it that way. But that's true. So it's like in the other practices, inasmuch as you can understand yourself, you can understand others. So you begin this practice by bringing into your awareness a felt sense of yourself. If that's difficult, you can imagine yourself as you were as a child or at any time. And breathing in and out of your heart, sending out love with no judgment, no thoughts of wanting yourself to change, just perfect as you are in this moment. And the traditional phrases are, may I be happy. Just like all beings, I want to be happy. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy and strong. May I be safe. May I be safe. Free from all harm, inner and outer. May I be safe and free. And you can repeat those phrases. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I be safe and free. Over and over, breathing in and out, just very lovingly toward yourself. And now bring to mind a mentor or someone who has been very good to you, who has helped you along the way, who's been a teacher, maybe a grandparent, someone for whom you have great appreciation, a benefactor. And to this person, may you be happy. Same non-judging, just sweet, simple love. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you be safe and free. And now bring to mind someone you don't know so well, but is in your life, someone about whom you don't have any judgment. It's not an important person who you care a lot about, or someone you have any aversion toward. Could be someone you work with but don't know very well, or someone you get your coffee from in the morning. And again, the same loving kindness to that person. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. you be healthy, strong, safe, free. Noticing how it feels with each different person, sending loving kindness, care. And now bring to mind someone who you have difficulty with. Doesn't have to be the most difficult person, but someone you struggle with. And to this person also, sending the same loving kindness, breathing in and out. May you be happy. And if it's really difficult to do that with this person, you can say, in as much as I can, I wish that you be happy, peaceful. And now bring to mind someone in your life who made it possible for you to be here, who somehow contributed to you being able to be here these days. May you be happy. And now bring into your mind all the people in this room, everyone you've been sitting with, sending loving kindness. May you be happy, peaceful. May you live your life with ease. May you be free from all mental and physical suffering. Opening. And now imagining the circle of your awareness getting larger and including everyone at Garrison who's not in this room. May you be happy. And then larger, so that the circle includes everyone and all beings, animals, birds, insects, fish, all beings in this country, the air and the water, everyone who's here. May you be happy, peaceful. Opening your heart. And then let that circle become wider and wider until it includes everyone, all beings everywhere, the whole globe, the air. May all beings be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be strong and free and safe. Sending loving kindness to all beings everywhere. Without limit. I think we'll just say good night on that note. And if you have questions about the practice, we can talk about it tomorrow when we meet again. So, sweet dreams.